Welcome, welcome, welcome. Merrill Chandler here with the Fundability podcast. Today we have got an outstanding interview. A Forbes contributor, article contributor, has her own column. She has a vast knowledge about serving entrepreneurs from an accounting, CFO, planning. We're going to be celebrating Women's History Month. We're going to be talking about how she got here, not just what the skill sets are that she's acquired over a lifetime of awesome service to entrepreneurs. So when we get back, we'll do a deep dive into, once again, the path of female entrepreneurs in exercising and claiming just that special place they have in the world. We will see you in a moment.
In the constantly changing world of fundability, the big question is this: how are entrepreneurs and real estate investors like us, ones who want to grow our businesses and who are tired of paying for really expensive alternative lending, how do we tap into the most inexpensive money available and do it without the hassle of typical borrowing? That is the question, and this podcast will give you the answers. Welcome to the Get Fundable podcast with your host, Merrill Chandler.
All right, you guys, welcome back. Merrill Chandler here, your guide to the Get Fundable universe. And we have a special guest today. As I said in my intro, we're celebrating Women's History Month. We're celebrating the women becoming literally forces of nature in every area of life, especially finances. And so my guest, Melissa Houston, is with us today. She's got more credentials. She's got more alphabet, three-letter sets of alphabets that I've seen in a very long time. And so that all, but as you know how this goes, my guess is it's not what you have become, Melissa, it's how you became her. And so let's get to it. Just let everybody know kind of who you are today, and we'll talk about how we got here in a minute.
Perfect. Yes. So my name is Melissa Houston. I'm a CPA and I am a financial strategist for CEOs. So what that means is I help business owners increase their profit margins so they keep more money in their pocket and ultimately increase their net worth. I also am the host of the Business Society podcast and I am a columnist at Forbes.com.
Well, like I said, guys, like I said. All right. So yes to all of that. But when you and I are talking pre-show, right? Me finding out a little bit more about you. How did you where did you start out as a younger woman? Let's say you're in your late teens, early 20s, college, whatever that path started out as. What was your initial engagement? What did you want to do in the world? Because for most of us, very few of us end up where we thought we wanted to start. So tell us a little bit about your mindset, your heart set, as you were a younger woman and you were beginning your journey.
Yeah, this is such a great question. And I certainly, well, I guess I'll start from the beginning. So when I graduated high school, I always wanted to be a social worker. I did a social worker program. That was my first career. I worked in that field for about 6 years. And I realized that if I wanted to have a family and raise kids and stuff, that was a high burnout career to have a life outside of social work, right? So I was kind of like, oh, well, I have no idea what I want to do now because I always wanted to help people in any capacity, right? So just, by way of what my grade 10 teacher told me, she thought I was very promising in business. So I ended up going into a business program for lack of anything, any other direction I had. So while I was in the business program, I had to choose a major and I had zero idea what I wanted to do. Looked to my dad and said, hey, what do you think's a good idea? And he's like, I think accounting is a good idea. So I'm like, okay. So I ended up, going into accounting. But then,
Well,
once I
because
started,
what dad wants, what all of us dads want is something that is dependable, faithful. Make sure that they are that there is security and long term, so that our little girls are taken care of, right?
exactly. And my dad was no different. That's exactly what he wanted. And he thought this was practical. And, he's like, you can get your CPA with this. So off I went. And, as I started studying and getting into the field, getting work experience, I really enjoyed, I'm a cerebral type of person. I'm social, but I'm cerebral. And I really enjoyed what I was learning, and I could see how it could apply to so many situations, and how valuable the skills were that I was gaining. Right, because accounting is not just about debits and credits and bookkeeping. There's so much
Right?
more you can do with it. Right.
Yeah, yeah.
So taking it at a senior
Strategy,
level.
planning, long term. Yeah.
Exactly. I loved the strategy planning. I loved helping people with understanding their business finances. So working in public accounting and corporate finance, and all the places that I've worked, I've got a vast work experience. But one thing that I noticed that was so common was that there was a lack of business finance knowledge. And so whether I was working with project managers or business owners, it was there was a lack there. So I knew, okay, at some point I knew I wanted to go into business for myself. And I knew in as early as like 2004, I believe, I was like, when I go into business, I am going to help business owners understand their business finances. And I was adamant about that because I could see the value and I could see how there was a huge gap.
So
But
let me get this right. So you're an entrepreneur serving entrepreneurs and small businesses, and then soon medium businesses in this process, right?
at that time, I was not. I was employed. I was not an
Ah,
entrepreneur, but I was
yep.
serving entrepreneurs and
Got it.
and project managers and such. But I knew I wanted to have that entrepreneurial journey. I just, I had kids. It felt the timing wasn't right. There was all sorts of excuses as to why I wouldn't start this journey. But in not starting that journey, I ended up getting myself into a ton of trouble. So I think we're going to touch on that a
Good.
little bit,
Yeah,
right?
the goodies are coming, guys. Stay tuned. The goodies are coming.
So yeah, and through my working career, up until about 2 years ago, I was employed.
All right. So let's get to some of the what were the triggers in this corporate journey? Because like you said, until a couple of years ago, it was corporate-y, right? You
Yeah.
still were serving the market you always wanted to serve. You were just under the umbrella of an organization, right? So
Mhm.
what were some of the triggers that caused these negative, I can't call anything in life a negative experience, because there's always they're bundled with some opportunity, right?
I
They're
love
bundled
that.
with some transformation. They're bundled, where for every new limitation there's a new freedom. So tell
Mhm.
me what what some of those triggers were, some of those face plants were, where you literally just fall on your face and you're like, the hell did I just do?
Yeah, and that's a great question. And I love how you said that with every, failure or mistake, there's a learning opportunity. So, over the course of my career, it was since we are Women's National Month, I'm going to relay a little bit of this story too, where there was a lot of the male leaders were difficult to deal with,
Okay,
and
don't
and
don't pussyfoot around this and say there's bias, prejudice, and and misogyny in the space.
they
I'll say it
ticked me
for you, so
off.
you don't have
Yep.
to. Look,
Yeah, they ticked me
I'm a
off.
single white male, older male. I am the man, right? So
Yeah.
if I say it, then I definitely add legitimacy to it, right?
Yes, I love that. I love that. Yeah. So a lot of them proven to be very difficult, and God forbid you would know something that they hadn't thought of, or what have you. And then just generally being bored, being limited to what I was working on, and what I was pursuing kind of trapped me into a career that felt very misappropriate, right? Because as I mentioned earlier, I'm very social. I like to help people. That's a huge part of who I am. And being an accountant, working in cubicles or small offices or, whatever I've worked in over the years, and, being that person behind the desk who's looking at the numbers and the spreadsheets and interpreting, I mean, that was all fine and dandy, but without the social aspect of the job, it was very limiting to me. I knew I was not feeling or pursuing my
Yeah.
life's purpose, right?
Yeah, right. Yep.
But because I had kids, because I had a really good job, because, I had responsibilities at home, I had, financial obligations, all sorts of reasons, I chose not to pursue that entrepreneurial feeling that I had within me, right? That desire to go out and do something and challenge myself and be happy.
Yeah. Now I just have to throw in here, listeners, viewers, how many of us have found that same experience? How many of you are experiencing that right now, where there is a deep, deep, unsettled experience that you may be having as a result of not reaching your highest potential as you see it, not setting a new bar, not leveling up because of the obligations. So I don't want to miss this point, Melissa, that you're not alone. And I know that in our among our listeners, there are innumerable amazing, talented women full of grace and goodness who haven't walked the plank yet, right?
Exactly.
They haven't said, holy, I am out here all on my own, doing my best. So I just wanted, you're saying some insanely vital things that speak to the heart and the soul of so many women today.
Yeah. And I'm, at that point, I was back there with those women who weren't doing it. But what happened to me is, hindsight's always 20/20, right? And at the time, about 6 years ago, I went into this spending spree from hell. And
was it retail therapy?
It was retail therapy gone beyond, right? So I blew through $100,000 worth of credit, and I hid about half of that from my husband. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, it was big trouble. And what was happening, like I said, hindsight's 20/20. I mean, at the time, I knew what I was doing was wrong. I'm a CPA. I'm educated in all things debt, finance, and the whole bit, right?
Yeah, you're doing the math in every purchase, right? Okay, where's our debit credit ratios?
Exactly. And I knew exactly how much interest expense I was paying on carrying this enormous amount of debt. And I knew the pain I was causing in the relationship, although my husband didn't know it at the time. So I knew, because I was concealing it, it was so wrong on so many levels. So when, everything had to come to the surface and I got busted and had to deal with the consequences.
It sounds like you're a drug dealer. You're like, I got busted,
Well, I was definitely busted.
Tell us about that moment of truth, because we all have secrets, right? And some of us, while we're struggling with our pain or the dissonance inside of us, sometimes we do things, and it doesn't have to be necessarily financial. It could be extramarital relationships. It could be how we're not showing up in our jobs. How there's all kinds of ways our dissonance shows up, right? So tell us about what was happening before you got caught. Just that in that process of the revelation and coming to terms with, that was no bueno.
Yeah. I mean, I was bored. I was bored in my job. I felt like I should be okay. And I felt like I was being ungrateful for wanting more. But I was bored and I wanted more, and I wasn't being true to myself. So then, of course, the bad behavior comes out.
Yep, we're going to take it out on Nordstrom's. We're just going to I'm going to take it out on you, Nordstrom's.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened, and you realize that retail therapy, only that buzz lasts for so long, and then you up the ante and up the ante, right?
I'm sure you look spectacular during that whole period.
Yeah, and you should see my backyard. I've got this gorgeous in-ground pool.
Oh, snap. So you went all the way in.
Oh, okay. I went all the way, like $100,000 all the way.
But let's look at that. Because of boredom, your internal dissonance, that you're unsettled in your own heart, your own soul. Listeners, how many of us feel that, like, that where we're trying to solve that ugly feeling or not showing up? It doesn't even have to be ugly. That we're not being all of who we can be, right, Melissa? That we're not realizing, and the human being that we were designed to be, and so we take it out on family, our friends, on our credit cards. We take it out on everybody because we're not feeling okay.
Exactly. It's the worst thing you can do to yourself, right? And I love sharing this story with you because clearly you get it. And, the reason I share this story is so I can help others who are feeling this way or have gotten themselves in this position so that they understand that we are not defined by our mistakes. Yeah, we can make huge mistakes like I did, right? Like huge.
Yeah.
And, of course, I was very embarrassed at the beginning to share my story, especially, like, what are people going to think? What are my colleagues going to think?
Yeah.
It just that whole, fear
shame.
of
That
absolutely.
shame that we fear or feel when we've been coloring so far outside the lines, right?
Yeah.
So far.
Yeah. But what happens is it makes us relatable, right?
Yeah.
And if you can help one person with the story, then it's worth sharing. And like you said earlier, the best thing is that by this huge phenomenal mistake that I made, I got the best lessons out of it. Very expensive lessons.
It's a Harvard education expensive.
It is,
right?
yes, for sure.
So share with it. What are some of the things? What are the new opportunities, the ahas, the realizations, those epiphanies that you've had as a result?
So when I realized the reason why I had put myself in that situation and realized it was from the boredom of my life and wanting more and how I was holding myself back from becoming that entrepreneur, taking that leap of faith and knowing that what I had to offer the world was valuable, that is the huge lesson I got from it, right? Because by not being true to myself, the only person I was hurting was myself, right? So overspending, overeating, whatever the case may be, is you're really only damaging yourself and maybe some loved ones around.
Self-destructive. Yeah.
It's self-destructive.
Yeah, we talk about in finances and what we call fundability. There's borrower behaviors that the credit bureaus, FICO, lenders all measure to see if they should invest in us, right, with loans and et cetera. And we call it borrower behaviors. Well, those behaviors don't stop with our relationship with money. It's what behaviors do we have that cause distress in ourselves, our loved ones, our team members, our employers. What is the distress that's going on? And we're acting out, but they're behaviors, right? It's just a way and ultimately they all reveal that wild, disconcerted, painful internal experience we're having, right?
Exactly. And it can be changed. That's the great thing.
Speak to that.
These behaviors can be changed. So, once I realized that by not being true to myself, I really wanted to get out and start my own business and do the things that make me happy and feel fulfilled in my career, I went for it 100%. Like I was all in. It was like a switch that just flipped. And I was like, I'm done pretending I'm somebody I'm not, and I'm going for it. And by being true to myself, I lost the feelings of boredom. I lost those bad habits of, turning to the internet and shopping mindlessly to make myself feel better, or, looking in the fridge to see if there's any sort of miracle solution. No, you never did, eh?
I've never done that. COVID did not add 25 pounds to my person because I was bored and eating my emotions. Now, my emotions at the time were it was like a banquet table of fine cuisine. So I was just right?
Exactly. I mean, we're all human. It all happens to us, right? So, when I went 100% in, which I did pretty much immediately, I've been in business for 2 years now. I have accomplished a lot of things that I'm really proud of within that 2 years, right? And,
Yeah.
one of the things I really learned and had to do was feel the fear, but do it anyways. And so many of us get caught up in that fear, right?
Yeah.
And it holds us back from doing things in our business. And I'm just like, you know what? I feel it. I feel it for a second, and I say, I'm still going for it,
I'm going for it.
because
Yeah.
it's never going to go away.
It's the dilemma of getting on that wild roller coaster, right?
Yeah.
We put onto the roller coaster way more anxiety than the roller coaster ultimately gives to us. We're
Yeah.
looking at it going, damn, that's wicked. I don't know if I want to do that, right? But then most of us, not all of us, but most of us, when we get off the ride, we're like, do it again, right?
Yeah, that was fun.
Because our ideas about the future, our ideas about breaking out of the corporate world, our ideas about creating a life we love, right, is what the anxiety associated that with may well be way more, way less painful than what we put on it, what it actually is, right? So, all right,
Exactly.
so what would you? So this has happened recently, the last couple of years, and you did it in the middle of COVID. So if the
Yes.
math is right, I mean, you said
Right at the beginning of COVID is pretty much like I opened my doors, and a month later, oh, we're in a pandemic. So I'm like, great.
there we go. So
Yeah, but I had nothing to measure my success against, so it was good, right?
you're like, this is the world as it is today, so we might as well
Yeah.
go for it. All right,
Exactly.
so tell me, Melissa, what would you tell somebody who is starting their journey, because we have a lot of young entrepreneurs, right, college age, etc. What would you tell someone in the early days, when you were making a decision to become an accountant and a CPA? What would you tell if you were somebody's coach and their dad just told them to become an accountant? Now, I got nothing against accountants, you guys, because it is an amazing experience for some personality types, right? You're literally built for it, right?
Yeah.
But fathers are not built to send their daughters out into the wild entrepreneurial world right out of high school, right?
Yeah.
So those daughters, those young women, count on us to at least give them a full colored palette to paint with, not just moms or dads or the school counselor, like in your case. So what would you coach a young college age woman who is exploring, or maybe not even exploring, but just going down a beaten path that she thought she needs to follow?
Yeah, and it's such a great question because I have that daughter. So, right now,
I rest my case. I rest my case.
She's 18 years old. She just finished her first year of college. She's not loving it. She's confused. She doesn't know what to do. And I see an entrepreneurial spirit in that kid, and I have seen it since she was young, right?
Yeah.
But I also believe in the value of getting educated first, because you'll always have something to back up on, and trying different things. I keep telling her, you're 18. You don't need to know what to do for the rest of your life.
You got a big
Try
long
different
runway.
things.
Yeah.
Exactly. There's no rush. There's no, like you have to go to school, do the 4 years, get your degree, and go get some job and do that for the rest of your life. That's just not the way the world is built these days. So the advice I offer her, and what I would advise anybody, is, get that foundation in place, get that, that credential, that educational credential. I know that, in this day and age, it's absolutely not necessary, but that's part of me, old school, right?
Right.
Just
Yeah.
have something to fall back
Fair.
on.
Yeah.
Right.
Totally fair.
And just enjoy the process of trying to figure out who you are and what you want to do, because who you are today is not going to be who you are 10, 20 years down the road.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's never too late to change your course or your direction, right? Like, I mean, look at me. I'm in my late 40s and I started my business 2 years ago. you
It's
know?
never too late. That
It's
was one of the
never
big
too late.
messages that I'm inspired as I'm getting to know you and going through this process is it's never too late. And never,
Never.
ever, ever.
Yeah.
And one of the things is just the human nature that I want to bring up because it feels like you're a poster child, like I am. You're the poster child for this process. Guys, remember, many of us learn who we are, discover who we are by learning who we're not first.
Yes.
We ping something and we're like, "Yep, not that. Nope, I'm not a bohemian. Nope, I'm not an accountant.
Yeah.
Accountant only, right? I'm not. Well, what remains? Well, this feels really comfortable that I'm not
Yeah.
these things, but I feel that I am this, right? And so that is, I mean, your life represents that to a significant degree, right? Defining who we're not, and then embracing who we are. And you're in your late 40s, and you're embracing you're taking all your skills. I notice you haven't your new entrepreneurial path does not for 1 second miss out on all of your life experience. You get to implement all of it.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
so I want us all to be aware that gathering more knowledge and experience is always going to serve every single thing we do, even if you,
Mhm.
I totally love it. All right, so keep going about your daughter, but what you would tell these young women who are creating they're looking at their life as though it's not going to pass in a blink of an eye, right? What did Oscar Wilde say? He said that youth is wasted on the young. So I
I don't think
love
I
that quote.
wasted it.
Right? So what else would you share? What would you share with them?
Yeah, I mean, if you are going down that entrepreneurial path and you want to start your own business, there's definitely some business advice that I would share as well. One being, don't chase shiny objects, right? Once you figure out what you want to offer, you don't need 5 million different courses that are offered on the internet. What you need to do is get that offer out there and start making money on it.
Yeah.
And get that money coming in so that you can manage your money well. And in managing your financials or your business finances, you will create wealth. The best way to create wealth for people is to start their own business. But first, get that money coming in the door. Second, know how to manage your money. Third, don't spend more than what you're bringing in. So, like I mentioned, there's tons of shiny objects out there, and
Yeah.
you may think you need all the marketing and the messaging and this person's got this course, and and you end up spending like $100,000 on online
On credit.
courses.
Yeah, on credit.
Yeah, don't do that. Buy things as you can afford them. Take that money, that profit that you're earning in your business, and reinvest it for growth. Don't expect everything to happen at once. It's not going to come at once. It takes time to build a business.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Mhm.
All right, and one of my favorite questions, especially when we're talking to when I'm interviewing women, is that what would you tell the men in the life of an aspiring woman who's looking to create and do more for themselves?
Be supportive and know that women can do just as much as you can or more. And
Well,
shut up.
I'm gonna the women in my life, I'm gonna say more because
Yeah.
so saying support. So let's resolve that what you're still married, right?
Yep. Yep.
So what happened? How did your husband support that experience when you were caught?
Mhm.
And how did that resolve? And what does support look like when the loved one of your husband is struggling with this experience? To speak to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, when we talk about the debt and when he found out about it, he was extremely disappointed in me and angry. And I'm not going to downplay his emotions whatsoever. And he rightfully so, right? But the saving grace was that we always had a very strong relationship and communicated. We had financial goals when we got married, and we worked towards them. So that 1 year I veered off course, which did a lot of damage. He knew that that wasn't who I was, right? So that's where I was very lucky, because he knew me well enough to know that clearly something's going on, or she wouldn't have put us in this position.
There it is. Keep going.
Now, of course, I wasn't, I mean, I can freely say this. I was not allowed to spend. And normally I wouldn't say that because I'd be like, no man's going to tell me what I'm going to spend. But
right. But at that point, that's the partnership. So it doesn't matter if it's two men, two women, man, woman. As a partner, one showed bad behavior. They get to be on a
consequence list.
The consequence. Okay, that's a great way to say it. You, Smith, are on a consequence list.
Yes. And I believe that he took my credit cards away and was monitoring absolutely everything that came into the house. So
now, you did not. So hearing what you're reading between the lines, you did not experience that as control by a man. That was a partner saying, whoa, little lady, we've got some challenges that confront us as a team, and we need to right this ship. And this is, and now you're on the consequent list.
Exactly. Like, you did this, now it's time to fix it, and this is not going unnoticed. And it took a while to sort of rebuild that trust, but we're still in a good place. And CNBC had actually interviewed us back in February, and they asked him, how have you changed from it? And he's like, well, I never check out of the finances again. Like, I'm always, involved now. But, he's like,
What do the nuclear teams trust but verify? Trust but verify. Trust but verify. Right?
Exactly. Exactly. So I mean, it was a learning lesson for all of us. And like we discussed earlier, these big pain points bring in a lot of value. So if anything, it brought us closer because we communicate a lot more and a lot better about, our financial goals,
Right.
So I'm sorry, but I do forget the question that I was going towards answering.
Oh no! What did support look like? What
you
tell men? You said men support the women in your life towards those things, and I asked, what did support look like when you kind of did that face plant and had those struggles?
And then when I was building the business, and still do, my hours aren't as long as they were in the beginning, but he's supported by helping out with the kids, making dinners, cleaning the house, stuff like that. It didn't have to be all on my shoulders just because I'm the woman. It was, a team effort. He recognized what I was doing that was bringing in value to the household, and he reciprocated by helping out in other ways. So that to me was huge support.
Well, you heard it here first, everybody. Melissa Houston, thank you for joining me on our podcast. This is the point: is bullets of accomplishments don't tell the story of how we got there. And thank you for being vulnerable with me and sharing what was a hardcore situation that many of us have run into, right? Or let's say many of us who are having an internal battle about the value of our own lives and how we're going to manifest that value out into the world, right? So thank you for joining me. Thank you for your story. Thank you for thank you for having those miserable times, because I know it's going to bless the lives of my listeners and women and women everywhere. It's been a pleasure, Melissa.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such a fun talk.
Absolutely. All right. You be well. And be sure to watch for the next podcast. If you like, love, share, comment, you guys, this is mad a reinforcement of our tribe's principle that the heart of the matter creates the success of the matter.
Thank you for listening to the Get Fundable podcast. Please leave comments because Meryl would love to read about your aha moments from this episode. And be sure to visit getfundable.com to read our blog, get important links, join our community, and much, much more, like ordering Meryl's tell-all book that is changing the world, The New F Word. And you got to tell your friends about this podcast because we want them to get fundable too.